Hey guys, no video for our food and eating in Japan playlist. So we've talked about Cocos Family Restaurant before. We've showed you some stuff in Cocos Family Restaurant. Fairly typical Japanese family restaurant. Quite good quality, quite reasonably priced. As a family restaurant, it's a good place to take a family. So we do eat dinner there occasionally, and we've had the occasional lunch there as well. We were aware that they had a buffet breakfast there, but buffets in Japan can be a good experience. We've had some good buffet meals before, but it really depends on a few things, because sometimes you can find that it can be a little bit like feeding time at the zoo, you know. Japanese people are usually very polite and reasonable and civilized and pleasant to be around. But probably, as in a lot of other countries, buffet restaurants can bring out the worst in people, and that can happen here too. And they can end up sort of a bit pushy and a bit sort of too close and a bit sort of, it can end up being a little bit of a stressful situation, you know. So we have found that with buffet places. So again, we've been to some good ones, but we've been to some ones that weren't so good. Also, what they were serving as a buffet breakfast too wasn't really appealing. It just, you do find that with some places in Japan with breakfast, because Japanese style breakfast, if you're into a bowl of rice with a raw egg, some vegetables, fish, that sort of thing. If that's what you enjoy for breakfast, then you'll be right in Japan, because pretty well anywhere that serves breakfast is going to serve a combination of those things. However, if you prefer a Western style breakfast, you know, your idea of a nice start to the day is eggs and bacon and sausage and toast and that sort of thing. It's a bit more difficult to get that here. You know, you can get it. Denny's family restaurants has it. You know, Western style hotels will often have it. One thing you have to prepare yourself for though is quite often those things aren't served hot. So if they do have a buffet that includes eggs and bacon and sausage and toast and all those things, quite often they're not served hot. They might be on some sort of bain-marie setup that's supposed to keep it warm, but quite often you'll find it's sort of slightly warm or it's room temperature. But usually if you've lived here a while, you won't care. You know, if you find a buffet that's got, you know, good eggs and bacon and sausage and whatever else it is that you like to have for breakfast, they have what you like to eat. If it's room temperature and you've lived here for a while, you won't care that it's room temperature. You'll be used to it. For some people, that can take some getting used to it first time you sit down to a breakfast or a dinner, and it's at room temperature. You know, room temperature meat is quite common here, as we've talked about before. So we'd been aware of the Cocos Family Restaurant breakfast buffet. We had been aware of it because occasionally when we eat there for dinner, you know, a dinner for 4 people, just as a matter of interest, a dinner for 4 people there could be 3,000 yen, which is about $30. So, you know, it's not a big thing to do that, you know, once a month or something like that. Go to Cocos for dinner is quite a reasonable thing to do. So when we're there, we often see the breakfast menu and the big poster up on the wall advertising their breakfast buffet, and it just wasn't appealing. You know, they had veggies and salad and some spaghetti and croissants, mini pastry things, scrambled eggs, sausages, and that was about it. There were lots of little things, and that's sort of their idea of a Western breakfast, is to give you all that strange variety of stuff, you know. And the idea is that they think that a little bit of those things, a little bit of a few of those different things is okay, right? So it's sort of, weren't real keen on that. Denny's breakfast is actually more what you'd expect. You get a nice big plate, a dinner plate, by Japanese standards, a dinner plate with whatever you order. You know, whatever kind of eggs you want, whether it's fried or scrambled or whatever, and you know, bacon and sausage and salad and whatever else you want. Or at Denny's you can also get the fish and the rice and the raw egg and all those other things as well. So that's why Denny's is usually normally our first choice. So recently we found ourselves, we had to travel somewhere on Sunday, so we decided that to save time with the family, you know, just drop into Denny's on the way and have a quick breakfast and then take off and go to this place that we had to go to. So we turned up at Denny's, and the queue, they usually have a waiting area just inside the entrance, and you go and write your name down and sit there and wait till your name's called. And that area was full. And then the Genkan between the outside door and the inside door was full of people, and there was people waiting outside. So one look at that and we knew that we'd be waiting for 30 minutes, half an hour or an hour maybe to get in there. So no, we can't do that. All right. So Cocos was just down the road. Let's try Cocos, right? Let's give the Cocos buffet a shot. Who knows, it might be all right, you know, I said with great reluctance. So anyway, time was an issue. So we went to Cocos, and the first thing that got me, when we walk in the door, usually in Japan you walk in the door and the staff greet you straight away. "Yusaimase," and they'll come straight to you and say, "Sorry to keep you waiting, how many people?" Right? And there's no waiting, but they always say sorry to keep you waiting, but there's usually no waiting. "Sorry to keep you waiting, how many people?" "4." "Okay, this way please." "Okay, here's your table, you know, sit down, here's the menu, today's special," you know, the usual 5-star service you get from Japanese restaurants and businesses, you know. However, we walk into Cocos and it's mayhem, there's people everywhere, and there's one staff member visible behind the register standing there, and we walk in and the person behind the register says, "How many people?" We said 4, and 2 adults, 2 children, and right, that'll be 2,800 yen, so that's about 30 bucks. So that's pretty good, $25, $30, so that's pretty good for a breakfast for 4 people. "Okay, please find a table, please help yourself to a table," right? Which is really, well, it happens, it does happen, but usually not in family restaurants in Japan. Usually they take you to a table, they give you a menu, they give you the things to wash your hands with, and you know, usually get a bit of service. But no, just go find a table. That was the first warning sign. I was like, oh, okay, not a big deal, right? Not a big deal, but just things like that in Japan can be a clue as to what's coming. So anyway, go find a table. So I go find a table, yeah, all right, sit down at the table. Okay, so now found a table, now we need to leave something on the table to reserve the table for us, and then go to the buffet, right? And so we walk over to the buffet, long line of people waiting for the buffet, and they had a box with plastic gloves in it, and usually here they have drink bar, right? And everybody goes to the drink bar and gets a drink and pushes the buttons, and usually they haven't had gloves, but no gloves because of Corona. They had these box with these gloves that only had a thumb, like a mitten, plastic mitten. So just so okay, put them on, all right, fair enough. And then pick up a tray, okay, fair enough. And then they had these plates like they have in prison. You know, the plastic plate. I'll put an image on the screen right now. There's the prison version. Right? There's the prison version with that's what you get in prison, right? And then here's the Cocos version, right? Pretty much the same thing. Now, the Cocos version I've shown you is the one they had on their website, right? That's not what we saw in the restaurant. What we saw in the restaurant is most people could only put one of those. What you're looking at there is 2 of those little prison trays, right? 2 of them on a normal tray. However, most people couldn't do that because they've already put their fork and their chopsticks and their paper towels and everything on the tray, which left no room to put 2 of those trays, right? So they only had 1 tray, and then so okay, I put one of those on my tray, and then I'm trying to do one of the kids' ones at the same time, and then okay, chopsticks, and I wanted a fork. Okay, I want a fork. Okay, now I need a knife because I had a plan to get sausages, and I also noticed at the other end was a waffle machine. So I'm going to need a knife, you know, to cut my stuff and cut the kids' stuff. So I looked, and they had forks, and they had chopsticks, and they had teaspoons, and they had kids' forks, little forks, and no knives. Right? No knives, no bread knives, no steak knives, no knife. Not a knife. Very similar to prison, do you think? So now they're standing there in the line serving ourselves, right? Very prison-y experience, holding our prison tray for our food, and there's no knives, right? Like prison, isn't it? So all right, okay, no knife, all right, we'll make do, and got to be flexible in Japan, you know. And all right, that's fine. So then go along the line, and because a lot of the stuff there, you know, some depends on what you're into, but you know, some of the salad and pickled vegetables, and no rice, no, not for breakfast, thanks. Pasta, spaghetti, room temperature spaghetti, no, not for breakfast, thanks. And then they had fried fish, and they had korokke. Korokke is like a fried thing, and it could be potato, or it could be beef, or it could be anything. And usually they'll tell you it's beef korokke or potato korokke, right? But it didn't say. All it said was korokke, right? The korokke of mystery. So it was a fried something. It could have been potato or beef or fish or anything. Who knows? And then what did they have? Oh, then they had the scrambled eggs. I'm quite into scrambled eggs. They had a bain-marie, room temperature, scrambled eggs. So I wanted to eat that, but that little tray is divided up into those little sections, you know. So you sort of, okay, put the eggs on a couple of those little sections there, and then they had the little mini croissants. I wanted to show you a video of all this, but it was total mayhem. There was no way of navigating this stuff with a camera in one hand. It just wasn't going to happen. I'm sorry. I was wondering, as this is happening, I'm thinking, I've got to make a video about this. And is there any way I can video this? And there was just no way. Because all around that table too, you know, it wasn't a real big table. It wasn't really spread out. It was all pretty compact, and everyone was really close. And the person behind me was really close, you know, and they do that in that sort of circumstance. Everybody closes up really close. And there was no way I was going to be using a camera on any of this. So anyway, I went down the line, went back to sit at the table with my prison tray, no knife. And then had to, I had food down, now back to the drink bar, then go back to the drink bar and get a drink, and then come back and sit down, you know. And look, it was all right, you know. The food here, it doesn't matter what the atmosphere is like, or whether it's room temperature or whatever, you know. The quality of the food here is consistently good, as I've said a million times on previous videos. You know, in Japan, it's really rare, really, really rare in Japan to get something where you think, oh, geez, that's not very good. It's really, really rare. It doesn't happen, you know. Usually, it's really rare. So you know, and fair enough, everything we got, you know, and because the other guys all picked different stuff to what I did, and you know, we had a mixture on the table. By the time we all got back to the table, we had a mixture of traditional Japanese stuff and Western stuff, and pretty much everything on that buffet ended up back in our table. So we got to sample everything, and everyone was pretty happy, you know. The other people, the other three, they were all pretty happy. They quite liked it, you know. But then they're all Japanese, see, so they're way more flexible and have a different attitude, you know. I mentioned to the wife about the prison tray, and she wasn't aware of prison trays, right, which is fair enough. I haven't actually done prison time, by the way. I'm just familiar with the prison system. But she wasn't familiar with the prison tray idea, so for her it was quite a sort of a normal thing. And that small serving of lots of things is a really typical Japanese way of eating too, you know. I mean, in the old days, it used to be bowls, and quite often now too. If you eat traditional Japanese food at an izakaya or something, you're going to get it, you know, little bowls, lots of little bowls with lots of different things in them, or even a bento box. If you look at a bento box, that's basically the same thing, isn't it? That's a box divided up into lots of little boxes with different things in each little box. And that's sort of the way Japanese people like to eat like that, you know. Whereas some of us that come from a Western style or different culture, you know, prefer, you know, a decent sized dinner plate with, you know, eggs and bacon and sausage and toast and maybe something else, all sort of there on the one big plate that we can sort of eat in different combinations as we choose, you know, and a good knife and fork so we can sort of cut it all up, and that's how we eat, you know. So to be given the prison tray and the fork and that style of tray, you know, it's curved. Each of those little sections is curved. So to try and, you can't cut anything anyway with a tray like that, and then to try and sort of get things up, it's just not practical, you know. It's not practical. So anyway, just thought this would be interesting for a few reasons. One is, anybody watching this who's in Japan, and a good percentage of our people who watch our videos are actually in Japan already. Any of you who've seen the promotions for Cocos breakfast buffet, there's a heads up for you. This is what to expect. My recommendation, go to Denny's, it's better. That's my recommendation. But also just to everybody else, you know, that if you think, you know, those of you who are just interested in Japanese life, but also anybody thinking about coming here in the future, it's just a heads up. You know, it actually brought to mind, while I was telling you this story and mentioning the bento box, it brought to mind when I stayed in, actually in Shirakawa-go. Shirakawa-go is that place you often see in postcards and things. It's the gasho houses. It's those thatched roofed houses up in the mountains of Gifu, and Shirakawa-go is famous. There's a famous scene. If you saw a photo of it, you'd recognize it. Those old thatched buildings and this little old town up in the mountains. And we actually stayed in one of those gasho buildings, an old izakaya, an old ryokan, really old one. And I stayed in one of those. It was absolutely amazing. It was before I started making videos, so it was, there's no video of it, unfortunately. But, you know, waking up in the morning and opening the window, looking out to, you know, 3 meters of snow outside the window, and they come along and they say, this is traditional style, right? They come along and they say, breakfast time. You know, there's none of this, what time do you want to have breakfast? It's, you know, they come along and call out, it's breakfast time, come have breakfast. Night time they come along and say, it's bath time, come and have a bath, right? But in the morning they'll come along and they'll say, it's breakfast time. You know, come and have breakfast, it's breakfast time. And so you go down to the room, the eating room, and you go in, it's tatami, and it's, you know, low tables and cushions on the floor, and there's your breakfast. And there's no question of what you want to eat or what you don't want to eat or anything else. Everybody, it's got the same. And it's that style with the bowls, you know, take the lid off the bowl, and this one's got miso soup with tofu in it. And you take the lid off this bowl and it's got rice. You take the lid off this bowl and it's got fish. Take the lid off this bowl and it's got pickled vegetables. Then you got a raw egg sitting there in its own little bowl waiting for you to crack it. So you pick up the raw egg and crack it over your rice, you know. And that's, you know, that sort of thing, you know, we're sort of used to in some of our cultures, we're used to having what we want done the way we want it. You know, how would you like your eggs? How would you like your steak? You know, how would you like your toast? You know, we're used to having things done our way, and I like to have it this way and I like to have it that way. Whereas Japanese people are much more flexible. Even the kids here are used to that sort of thing. You know, here's your breakfast, boom. You know, you're the customer staying in this hotel, but the traditional style is, here's your breakfast, eat this, you know. So if we look at it from that point of view, that's why for the Japanese people in that experience, they're all happy, because, you know, they don't mind standing in a group with lots of people really close together. They sort of like it. There's a noodle place near our place that's really famous, near our house. There's a noodle restaurant, and it's really famous, and it's a tiny little room, and everybody queues up outside, and then the owner says, right, next, and you go in and you get your noodles and you sit down and you eat your noodles, and then you get up and you leave, and then he calls the next person in. And I think they've only got seating in there for about 4 or 5 people. And Japanese people love it. They absolutely love it. There's just something about that feeling of something's popular. You know, oh, it must be good. I get that. My wife says that all the time. When we're driving along, we see a restaurant, it's got a queue outside, must be good. The first thing she says. So there's this anticipation. If there's a place that's popular and there's lots of people waiting, oh, it must be good. And there's that standing around for 30 minutes anticipation and then eating the noodles and oh, you know, and oh, aren't I lucky I got to eat the yummy noodles and off you go. You know, and it's sort of a bit the same with these buffet things. It's like there's this sort of excitement that all the people are clamoring to get through. I mean, they're not really pushing and shoving, but it feels a bit like that because they're so close, you know, and everyone's in really close and, oh, you know, they're getting all the stuff and, you know, waiting for the next ladle so they can ladle some more pickled vegetables onto their prison tray, you know, and it's all sort of exciting and take it back to the table, and they love that stuff. They love that stuff. So if you find yourself in that circumstance with Japanese people, of course, you've got to be cool because you might not be enjoying that experience yourself. Where's my fork? Where's my knife? Why haven't I got a knife? How am I supposed to cut my waffles and my sausage without a knife? You know, they won't care about that. They'll just sit there. Because keep in mind too that, you know, they had the forks there, but they also had the chopsticks, and lots of people were sitting eating all that stuff with chopsticks. Scrambled eggs and sausage. The sausages here are little mini sausages. They're only short, so they'll pick that up with their chopsticks and bite it in half, and put the other half down, and eat the half, and then put the other half in their mouth. And even the waffles, they'll sort of divide them up a bit with the chopsticks, but they'll still pick up a pretty decent sized piece of waffle to put it into their mouth. And see, when you're used to that, you know, eating with a fork and not having a knife isn't a big deal for those guys. So it's just different places like Denny's or Western style restaurants, Western style hotels and things like that, usually they're better equipped, you know, that they've got things like the options there. They'll have steak knives and they'll have bread and butter knives and they'll have all that sort of stuff, you know. So when you sort of prefer that, you know, something like this Cocos experience, if nobody's given you a heads up, I suspected this would be sort of what it would be like. I really did. I didn't anticipate the prison tray. I thought they'd have decent plates, and I didn't expect the lack of knives. But I mean, it's not a big deal. Again, with a lot of these videos, it's the same as the how-to videos, and a lot of these videos, they're not big deals, you know. Obviously, it's not a big deal, you know. But it's better if you know about it before you experience it, is my thinking. So a lot of these things, like mentioning that staying in a ryokan, what that's like with no choice of what you eat. And of course, it's good manners to eat everything, you not leave anything on in your bowls. So, you know, it's better. My thinking is, the reason I make these videos is that it's always better if people know about these things before they experience them, because it makes it easier when you know what's coming. It makes it much easier. It's always harder. They're the things that get you here. Quite often you listen to these videos and think, oh, it's not a big deal. But it's a timing thing. You know, we'd already gone to Denny's, we couldn't get in there, we're in a hurry, we had to go somewhere else, we'd come to this place, had to go in there, and suddenly you're standing in a queue at the buffet. You know, it's a timing thing. How high your patience level is at the time, what your expectations were, what the reality is. So that's my thinking about these videos. As I've said before, heads up videos, so you know what's coming. So, anyway, there's a couple of heads up in amongst all that, isn't there? Anyway, that was that. More videos coming soon.